Hey, my friends, and welcome back. My name is Dr. Titus Chiu, and this is The Modern Brain. What a strange and challenging time we find ourselves living in right now. If you're like the rest of every other human being on this planet, you're going through some really unprecedented times, just like myself with the global health pandemic. So what I wanted to do was share with you this quick video on how to use your mind to boost your immunity. One of the core principles that I live my life by is double down on the things that you have control over and let go of the rest. After I had suffered a car accident many years ago and was recovering from a concussion, that was one of the biggest lessons I had learned, because I found that after my car accident, my brain just wasn't working the same it was prior to my head injury. And so I try to control situations and I try to make things just run smoothly, and I was totally overwhelmed. Just being thrown about, having external events really influence how I felt, was just not working for me. And so I ended up hitting rock bottom. And that's when I realized that there's so many things that I really did not have control over, but there were a lot that I did. And so I started to double down on that. When I did, my healing just began to accelerate. And so that's one of the core principles that I then now live my life, based on that, doubling down on the things that I have the ability to control and letting go of the rest. And I find that lesson to be so relevant with the time that we find ourselves living in right now, right? And to be honest, when this first happened, I was just, checking the news all the time. I was reading Instagram and Facebook and looking at all the social media channels and news outlets and just getting more and more stressed and overwhelmed with all these things that I really had no ability to control. Outside of just living in a bubble and not ever going outside into the world again, we really don't have too much control in terms of exposure to any type of pathogens or bacteria or germs or viruses. But what we do have is the ability to strengthen our immune system. So what is the immune system? The immune system is part of this interconnected system that's found throughout our bodies, whose main job is to survey your environment for any dangers, like any bacteria or viruses or pathogens, and then neutralize it. So that's one of the main jobs, is surveillance and defense. Now that you understand what the main job of the immune system is, in order to strengthen your immune system, we need to know what are the major influences on your immune system. And so the number one influence that I'm going to be sharing with you today is stress. So when we think of stress, we think of things like mental stressors or emotional stressors, like the state of the world right now, or of the economy, or the uncertainty of how this is all going to play out, right? Those are all stressful things, things to think about, but they're all mental stressors. In fact, there's 3 different types of stress that we need to talk about. There's mental, emotional stressors, like I just mentioned, but there's also physical and chemical stressors as well. An example of a physical stressor is like a car accident or a concussion or a head injury. But it doesn't even have to be that dramatic. You can have like a minor trauma, like, for example, sitting all the time and scrolling, your news feed on your phone and not moving. That's actually a physical form of stress. As they say, right? Sitting is the new smoking. So that's a form of physical stress. In addition, we have chemical stresses. A very good example is processed foods. So all the chemicals and preservatives that are found in processed foods, as well as the high fructose corn syrup, all those things are very stressful to our brains and our bodies. And so that's a form of chemical stress. And then finally, like I mentioned before, mental, emotional stressors are just a lot of what, the narratives that we tell ourselves in our own minds. The reason why I'm sharing all of this with you is to give you a bigger picture of what stress actually is and how it impacts your immune system. So let's break it down a little bit more. So when you have a stressor, whether it's physical, chemical, or emotional, your brain goes into an alarm reaction and it sends a signal to this area we call your hypothalamus, which talks to your pituitary, and then finally your adrenal glands. So what happens there? Your adrenal glands release cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone, and one of its main jobs is to mobilize glucose, is to increase your blood sugar so you have the energy to either deal with the situation or run away from the situation, what we call the fight or flight response. Now, under short-term periods of stress, that's important because it helps you step up to life's challenges. But if you're under prolonged periods of stress or long drawn-out chronic stress or like big traumatic stressors, what ends up happening, that excess cortisol could be damaging to your brain cells. And so if you experience things like brain fog or neurofatigue or even things like depression, it could be due to excess cortisol from uncontrolled stress response. Now, in addition to that, there's also negative impacts that excess cortisol has on your immune system, because cortisol, in fact, not only does it, after long periods of time, could it damage your brain cells, but it also can suppress your immune system. It's a well-known fact that people who are on steroid medications like corticosteroids, they're at increased risk for infections. And the reason, again, is simple. It's because cortisol suppresses your immune response. Now, the good news is that even if you are on steroid hormones, or even if you're not and you just find yourself really stressed out based on the current situation that we're living in, that we find ourselves in, there's things that you can do to boost your stress resilience, and in doing so, strengthen your immune system. Because when you get a handle on your cortisol levels, that then allows your immune system to get stronger. So even if you're exposed to a germ or a virus or a pathogen, your immune system will be able to do what it does, not only survey the environment, but also defend against it and neutralize. So I'm going to be sharing with you 3 things that you can do to use your mind to strengthen your immune system. The first thing is just to avoid unnecessary stressors. So as an example, when I first learned about this, I was on social media all the time. I was reading news all the time. It's just overwhelming. Like, sure, it's good to stay up and be informed as to current events, especially as they impact you and your local community, as well as the global world. But it's one thing being informed, and it's another thing just being carried away. I mean, I was on my phone as soon as I woke up in the morning, and I'd be on it all day, and I'd even fall asleep with it, right? And not reading or learning about things that were inspirational, but things that triggered more and more stress and cortisol in my bloodstream. So I know during that initial phase, my immune system, my brain was just, tanked. It was not in a good place. And so I decided I needed to take action after just coming out of that haze and being brain fogged and feeling sick with fear and stress, that I needed to avoid unnecessary stressors. So I put a limit to the amount of news and social media that I consumed every day. And I also balanced it out with things that I found inspirational. I started to play the guitar again more often. I started to read novels and inspirational books and listening to spiritual audiobooks. So again, you want to make sure that you avoid unnecessary stressors and then balance it out with the good in life as well. That will go a long way towards strengthening your immune system. The second thing you can do in this situation is to carve out some special time for yourself every day. I'm sure many of you out there who are watching this, all of you, right, are in situations that are unprecedented. You're ending up to stay home, and even if it's with people that you love and it's your family or with your friends, it could be stressful because you're just kind of on top of each other all the time. And for those of you who aren't in a good situation in terms of your living quarters and relationships, this is even more important, is to carve out some special sacred time for yourself. Now I feel blessed. I have a home office that I could do a lot of my work from. I could do telehealth conferences with my clients. I can also create a lot of resources for you guys that I'm working on to share with you. And in addition, I have this office so I could just come and decompress and sometimes just not work, but just space out. So I really encourage you, even if you don't have a home office or a really large space you're living in right now, you probably have a bathroom. So go in the bathroom, if you need to, turn off the lights and just give yourself some time to reset. So that's the second thing I recommend that you do, is really carve out some special time in a physical location to decompress. And finally, the third thing that I recommend that you do is meditate. I can't tell you, one of the biggest things and practices that I've incorporated into my everyday life that's totally turned my stress around, my stress levels, is meditation. Because when you meditate, for example, when you practice a form of meditation called Vipassana, where you bring awareness to your breath or bring awareness to the movement of your belly and your breathing, you engage the right hemisphere of your brain, which, guess what? It puts a brake on that stress response when it is healthy. Okay, so by practicing meditation, a simple meditation where you just bring awareness to your breath just for 30 to 60 seconds a day, and then you can expand outwards to 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 15, and on and on. When you do that, you boost your brain's resilience, but specifically the right hemisphere, which then could put the brakes on your hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal. And in doing so, you can then boost and strengthen your immune system. So there you have it. Those are 3 things that you can do to use your mind to strengthen your immunity. Avoid unnecessary stressors, carve special time out of your day, and finally, practice meditation. I hope this video has been helpful and inspirational to all of you out there who are living through these really challenging and unprecedented times. And you know what? I firmly believe that we're going to get through this as long as we do it together. And I know that sounds odd because we're all, cooped up in our own homes, isolated from one another. So that's why it's important to share in the comments, share any stories of inspiration, of things that you are doubling down on that are working. Share even the things that aren't working for you and what you're going to do to further double down on the things that you can control. Feel free to post any questions in the comments. Share your messages and your stories of things that are working for you and anything that you know that can help encourage our collective minds to get through these challenging times. My name is Dr. Titus Chiu. Thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to hearing from you.